So I wanted to just take a second and talk about something that we do on campus sometimes. Nice hanger in this one, Vince. Pardon? Lots of stuff. Okay. Sometimes, for all the right reasons, we decide we are going to get a tree spade, and we are going to take this tree, and we are going to pick it up, and we are going to move this tree, and it's going to have a wonderful new life and a new home. Well, that's a pretty picture, but the reality is, sometimes when you're taking an established tree and you get the biggest tree spade you can, you're still only getting 40 or 50% of the tree's root system. So what we have here is a tree that was heroically saved about 15 years ago. It's a little leaf linden, and I don't know that it's grown more than 8 inches out since in the time that it's been relocated over here. The tree's still alive, we can still enjoy a live tree, but all the logistics we went through to move this over here, I'm just not sure was really the right thing to do. Now, that's not to say if the tree was half that size and we could use the same size spade, get a lot more of the root system, you're likely to have a much happier tree in the long run. But, you know, in all honesty, sometimes we run into political situations where people are really eager to try to do something to be seen as being nice to the trees. And I've seen it happen with 30 and 35-foot spruce trees. And okay, that spruce tree now has a third of the roots that it had before, and you have to put about 85 stakes and guy wires on it, and it sits there and it doesn't do anything for 3 or 4 years, then it starts to decline, and then you're removing it. It's just kind of frustrating sometimes. And I lay that out there just to help people understand that good intentions don't always equal good results. And spading larger trees is not always worth the rigmarole you go through to try to do it. Little leaf linden is a nice tree. It can be very nice in the spring. It's got a very pleasant aroma when it flowers. The flower is a very nondescript. You wouldn't even really know that it's flowering. Little leaf linden, they're just down the way a little bit. If you look down another 50 feet down the sidewalk, you'll see a close relative to little leaf linden. That is an American linden basswood. The basswood is a tree that's got a little bit of yellow foliage coming out right now. That's actually the beginning of the fall color for the linden. And the little leaf linden here as well is a yellow fall color candidate. And you can see that's just starting to show up in the tree. When we schedule the tree walk, we always make an effort to try to hit fall color. We've missed pretty thoroughly this week, but I would encourage you in about a week or two to get out and make sure you're looking around, because there's going to be some beautiful things to see. We had a really interesting spring with a lot of moisture. A lot of trees flowered very heavily, and we also have a lot of fruit set. And weather is a huge factor in determining when trees do things. And the fall color, when it goes this year, I suspect is going to be a really exciting year. What we're going to do is kind of get out of the engine alley area. We're just going to walk over to this lawn area over here, and we'll keep going.
Sí, porque me parece una excelente realmente yendo a
over the years, the nursery trade has learned that there's money to be made in finding trees that will do certain things in certain situations. And they're very happy to find trees like that because they have a niche market. And there is a niche market for trees that are columnar. This is a columnar English oak. So if you look at the foliage, you can see that it's very similar to the oaks that we saw back in the education courtyard. But of course, if you look at it, it's a very different tree. It's got a very tight, upright, longer corner. An interesting tree for a tight location. This is actually kind of a good match for this tree to be in a kind of a constricted space. Ideally, though, it's in competition, and it's in competition over here on my left is a really nice northern red oak. It's just starting to really take off, and eventually the northern red is probably going to kind of overwhelm the columnar oak. It's at a point now where there's really, you just need to sit back and enjoy that it's going to happen. This is really now what maybe going to correct it. Occasionally we'll try to do what we call separation pruning, where we'll just try to head back maybe the northern red oak and maybe work on the English oak a little bit to create more of a physical space. But eventually that's just one of those things where you're just going to end up having two trees pretty tight on each other. Columnar English oak doesn't really do anything much different aside from that shape and the upright form. The fall color is very similar to the regular English oak. But again, it's just kind of an interesting niche plant for a tight location. There are 6 or 8 columnar varieties of some different trees that can grow in Colorado, and they're very useful if you have a tight location. Take a second while we're here and talk about kind of an important Colorado native tree. Gentleman over here is leaning against common hackberry. Hackberry is native to kind of the eastern part of Colorado. The hackberry's got a couple of very distinctive features to it. One has a very interesting bark characteristic, kind of a warty, quirky, gnarly-looking trunk. Hackberry also has kind of long, oval-shaped leaves that are frequently prone to a little insect problem that gets in there that's called nipple gall. And if you look at some of the leaves, just grab one, but there are quite a few here on this lower tier. You can see these little protrusions on the bottom side of the leaf. It doesn't really do anything physically to harm the tree, but it is kind of annoying, and people are always fascinated with what's going on, and they don't understand that, and it's so ugly. And that's just kind of nature doing its thing. Hackberry, as you can tell, gets a yellow fall color. Another important thing about hackberry is it's very drought tolerant. Once the tree is established, it does very well with minimal water. So if you're interested in trying some xeriscape plants at home, hackberry is a good xeriscape plant. Again, any plant can be xeric, but the first couple of years it's new to you. It needs a little more water than it does long term because you're trying to help it get established. It really takes a new tree in a new location 2 or 3 years to kind of get its feet under it and say, oh, this is where I am now, this is what I have to deal with. And it's those first couple of years you really want to be sure you're favoring new plant material. Vince, is there anything you'd add about the hackberry I missed?
I would just add to your comment that it's a really good tree for Colorado. A lot of people are put off by the appearance of that gall from that mite getting in the leaves, but this is a really tough tree. It'll perform really well on our lousy soils, and it'll perform well in soils that have been disturbed, like after you've had development or changes. It's a good tree for wildlife too. As unsightly as the gall is, squirrels and migratory birds feed on it. It's a good tree over the winter, or not over the winter, but towards the fall when things are starting to fatten up. Some species of bird go to town on those gall, so they do serve a purpose. They don't really harm the tree that much, and I think it's an interesting tree in the winter, kind of like the catalpa. It has interesting winter habit, interesting bark texture, and once you, like Alan said, once you established it, it's very tough. It's a very durable tree.
Does it actually flower?
How long does it take to establish? We bought one 4 years ago, 1 inch in diameter. It hasn't moved at all.
There's so many things that could be going on at that particular site. I don't know how it was planted, or I would say that's not right. Something is wrong. So I would evaluate your site. I would evaluate the way it was planted. It might have accidentally been planted a little too deep, or it might have, there could be other issues. But it's probably something underground. Usually, if something won't establish, there's some problem with the roots.
But I would say it's also possible too that it's finally figured it out, and next year is when it's going to really start to go. We had another question?
Oh, I did. It's called a hackberry. Does it have the flowering and the berry that it carries?
It has a small, inconspicuous flower that I've honestly never even really observed, and it does get a small, very small, blackish, purplish fruit.
Okay.
Although it's not real
I
prevalent.
don't see any on this.
Yeah, and one of the things with fruit on campus. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right.
Tiny little pone.
One of the things with fruits, again, I like most of God's creatures, but the squirrel is not on my list of things I like a lot. And they are in trees, they are eating fruit, they are taking away a lot of identification methods for us by just doing what they do. So it's kind of frustrating not to be able to see things in full fruit because they're frequently in them before the fruit is even fully mature. And the same for birds. There's a lot of animals that are enjoying that. And I get they need to have something unique, but it's sometimes frustrating when you'd like to be able to show people some
Alan,
better stuff. Yeah.
real quick. this is an example too of our struggles with construction. This concrete, a lot of this concrete was torn up and re-poured. This was a much healthier, happier tree a couple of years ago. Development has to happen. Things are going to change around here. We accept that, but it's a constant struggle for us to try and maintain healthy trees where you're constantly getting the root zones disturbed and cut up and compacted and overran. And this is a good example of a tree that was quite healthy a couple seasons ago, and now it's pretty spare. It's got a lot of dieback in it. It's got a lot of issues.
And just to take Vince's point one step further, I'd like to give everybody kind of a quick rundown on how we look at root impact and root damage. So if you picture the canopy of this tree, if you can mentally remove the other trees that are around it and just focus on this tree. The furthest out that the branches reach, when it rains, those branches get wet. Then after the rain is done, the tree has a drip line where you would still maybe be getting drops of water. The drip line is usually a circular shape around the tree if you go to that outer edge of it. And generally, not every case, but generally 60 to 70% of the tree's active roots are inside that drip line. So if you're doing, and if you can picture that circle in your mind, and then picture bringing a sidewalk in, and if you're just barely getting into the drip line, you're not having a big impact. But if you look at this tree, this sidewalk is, a good 6, 8, maybe even 12 feet into the tree's drip line. So whatever root system it had over here when this was redone was exposed and potentially damaged. Now this was just a peel out and a replacement, so it wasn't as invasive as, say, a trench for a utility line. But again, the concept is the same. You're adding a stress to the tree that is to its detriment. And we have cases where trees end up with more than just a third of the drip line, 40, 50, 60% root zone impact. When you start getting numbers that are that high, you're really looking, unfortunately, at you probably need to just remove it and accept the fact that that's all you can do, because you're really compromising the tree's energy. And the more of that root zone you impact, the greater that impact is, and the more of a problem it is for the tree long term. Let's keep going.